We'll start with Richard. A quick bio. Richard is a current member of the Ojai Valley Water Advisory Group. He has been involved in the management of water and wastewater for over 40 years and has managed the operations and maintenance of the Casitas Municipal Water District and the Camarosa District, and has served as a consultant to other local agencies. He has chaired the steering committee for the development of the Callegas Creek Watershed Plan and has authored several studies analyzing the costs and benefits of multi-million-dollar projects, including the Conejo Creek project, construction of a wastewater treatment plant, and the acquisition by the city of Ventura of a sewer service area. Beginning in 2007, Richard used his experience to assist Ojai in its effort to replace Golden State Water Company by preparing a feasibility analysis of the acquisition. His analysis ultimately became the basis for the sale of the company to Casitas. Now retired, Richard serves on the board of Ojai Flow, and most recently authored an article which I would encourage all of you, if you're really interested in the issue, entitled Cooperative Regional Approach to Improving Ventura County's Water Supply Reliability, as a member of the Ojai Valley Water Advisory Group. He and his wife have lived in the Ojai Valley for 40 years and raised their children here. He has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in public administration from Cal State University, Northridge. Richard?
Thank you. Suzanne asked me to talk a little bit about kind of the statewide water issues and how we could focus back on local issues. I'm not a real expert on state water projects, particularly currently. I've been out of it for a while. But I think, the tunnels project or the Delta Fix that she's referring to is just one element of what Southern California and California as a whole has been trying to do since the 1989-1992 drought. And that is try to build sustainable, reliable water supplies so that we don't suffer this feast and famine approach that we've suffered through for nearly a century. Western Ventura, or Southern California, has done a lot of things since 1992 to secure a water supply, and in fact, most of Southern California has made it through this most recent drought in pretty good shape because they've built storage facilities to store state water project water when it's available, and they've entered into agreements with groundwater storage projects so they could store water in groundwater, and they've done extensive water conservation and water efficiency programs that reduced demand overall. So that they Metropolitan Water District, which serves most of the Southern California area, is fairly comfortable that they can withstand a drought like this and still maintain a constant level of service to their constituents. For Western Ventura County, we haven't done that much to take care of that problem. We had a drought in 1989-92 that was saved by a March miracle of 1993. And we were lucky and we survived that drought. But since then, it's been up and down. City of Ventura goes through constant water conservation and rationing programs. And most recently, we have this 5-stage program that's been introduced in the Casitas service area. The group that I worked with, that was our goal, is to take a look at this problem as a long-term issue, not a short-term drought problem. Droughts are predictable. We know they're going to happen. So it's not an emergency. It's something we can plan for. So what could we do to make our water supply reliable and sustainable? What could we do to tell a farmer, this is how much water you're going to have year after year? To tell a business operator, this is how much water you're going to have year after year, and a homeowner, the same thing. You may not have as much as you'd like, but if you know how much you're going to have, then you can invest and plan accordingly. So we started out by trying to identify what the problem is. And it didn't take long to realize that the problem really isn't the drought. The drought is going to happen, it's happened before, and it's going to happen again. But we took a look at what the conditions were with Lake Casitas and how Lake Casitas was managed. And it's managed based on a theory of safe yield, and that is how much water can you take out of the lake over the worst recorded drought, 20-year drought period, and survive. And it's a engineering tool to tell you how much water a project like that will produce. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how much water you can take out. If your goal is to empty the lake in a 20-year drought, then this is safe yield is what you would take out every year. But that shouldn't be the goal. So then we took a look at, well, how is the planning process going to deal with this 20-year drought if it actually occurs and the lake goes dry or near dry? Well, we looked at the forecasts that they were using to project the future, and they took 1965 through 1980, and they called that the recovery period. Well, that happens to be one of the wettest periods in recorded history. And in that recovery period, the lake will fill back up. So if we have another 1969 and another 1978, we'll be lucky and the lake will fill back up. But we've had rain events like that 7 times since 1969 to 2000, somewhere in 2005. We've had 7 years like that. But from 1900 to 1969, we only had 1. So what do you think the odds are that we're going to get another one real soon? Probably not very high. So if you add the problems we're dealing with climate change and the potential that this drought could last longer than 20 years, it's not a good bet to assume it's going to rain that much. So what we looked at is, well, let's take a look at a more conservative approach on how the lake will recover. So we used the period from 1962 to 1965 to 1980, the recovery period that was used in the original analysis, and we removed those big rain years and just left the moderate years. And what happens is the lake does recover somewhat, but what it does is it puts us in a position where we're perpetually in and out of various stages of drought and various stages of conservation. There's not a hope of full recovery, and certainly not a hope of sustaining a high level in the lake, unless we get these huge rainfall events. So looking at that, we thought, well, what are we going to do? I mean, that's our main supply. Well, obviously, if we change your philosophy and instead of using Lake Casitas as a primary source, use it as a source of last resort, and you use all of the other available water supplies efficiently and effectively, and you save the lake for periods when we won't have as much rain. And then we took a look at, well, how much water is out there? Well, if you look at individual authorities and individual territories, each has its strong point and weak point. But if you collectively look at Western Ventura County, we have a pretty significant amount of water. The problem with it is it's all affected by drought. It's all dependent on rainfall. Now, if you add in the element of state water, which we potentially have access to, it adds a little more water to the portfolio, but it's also affected by drought. So how do you manage these using your lake to make sure that you have enough water during those dry periods? So we took a look at that, and we took a look at how much water the city of Ventura uses and how much water all of the people in Ojai Valley use collectively in a normal year and in a dry year, and how we could effectively use all that water and reduce the amount of water we took out of Lake Casitas. And if we did that, it's called conjunctive use. It would be a conjunctive use arrangement with the city of Ventura and all of the areas in the Ojai Valley. We could reduce the amount of water we take out of the lake by about 40% annually. Right now, it's about 18,200 acre feet is the planned extractions. We could reduce that to under 12,000 acre feet. And if we were to do that, we could survive another 20-year drought and a very conservative recovery period and have a constant supply of water to the community and have a lake that never falls below 100,000 acre feet, or close to half full. The benefit of that is, well, you say, well, what are we going to do with that 100,000 acre feet? Well, that's for what we don't know is going to happen. That's for that emergency that we can't honestly plan for. If that drought extends longer than we thought, or if some other catastrophic event happens, that's our savings account. And so by working together, the city of Ventura and Casitas and all of the water users in the area, I think we could use what we have. We'd take a little bit from state water, minimize the amount we take, but take it when we need it, when they have it and we don't, and maintain a reasonable, safe level in that lake for future uses. The other element of our plan is this is really expensive. Well, fortunately, Cayugas Municipal Water District has a different problem than we have. They have a fairly sustainable water supply. What their concern is they could have a catastrophic event that severs their ties to the state water and to Metropolitan Water District. It would be a temporary problem, typically caused by an earthquake in the Santa Susana Mountains, and they believe that they would have 6 months to make repairs. And they need a supply to supply all of eastern Ventura County. So they're willing to invest in building some of the systems that we might need if we had a mutual aid agreement with them, that if that happened, we would deliver water from the lake to them during that 6-month emergency. And after it was over, they would repay it, whatever terms and conditions we negotiate. But it's kind of an ideal plan from the standpoint everybody is working together for a common purpose. You're building facilities that are much more versatile, where you can use resources when they're available and save the water in the lake. The other issue the other part of this is there are other plans out there to do other things. And those include what Russ is going to talk about, the Hobo project. There's brackish well treatment. And of course, there's a lot more we could do with conservation, permanent conservation, not the carrying buckets of water out to the plants, but permanently fixing things so we don't use as much water. But we're going to have to do that because one of the problems we're going to be facing is even the supplies we have today are probably going to be reduced. Climate change could reduce the amount of rainfall we get. There's work being done now on sustainability analysis for various groundwater supplies. My guess those are not going to result in more water, but probably less water. There's more environmental demands for water. So all of these various competing issues will gradually reduce the amount of the total supply we have. So if we don't have a way to have all of that interconnected so that we can manage it properly, we're going to have small pockets of communities that are going to get hurt really badly while others may survive. This way we're all in it working together. So the thing that we've asked is a couple of simple first steps. We never said, take our plan and adopt it and start building it. All we want to do is have a reasonable discussion and have some analysis of the feasibility of it. But the first thing I think we can do locally before we even go beyond that is set some real goals for Lake Casitas. One, set a minimum lake elevation. We shouldn't be taking the lake down to zero. We shouldn't have a plan that looks forward to that type of thing. We should set some level where we have an emergency supply that's there. Second, we need to take a real hard look at what our actual demands are. We're in stage 3 of the water conservation and rationing program. I don't know about all of you, but it's not that terrible. I mean, we're not suffering that much. And with a few fixes, those who are suffering, we could probably remedy some of that with some, better technology and maybe a reassessment of what those allocations are. But if we knew that we didn't need to take as much water out of the lake, that would make a big difference. And then look at that through a reasonable projection of what future rainfall events are going to be like. We can't plan for the worst case. We can't say, well, it's never going to rain again. There's no way we can do that. But we can do something reasonable that has the least amount of risk. So if we know what the minimum amount of water we want to keep in the lake is, we know what our real demand for water is, and we have a reasonable projection on what kind of supplies we can expect, then we'll know, do we have enough water or not? If we don't have enough water, how much more do we need? And that's really the question that has to be answered, that so far has not been answered. Thank you.